It is a big idea, a new world order.
Your world is not what it seems. Ansary, outside the box.
The Iron Fist, cloaked in a velvet glove, is now accelerating its squeeze of the populations at large on planet Earth today. And there is a wave of panic that's being experienced in the minds of global investors that have been both deceived and confused over the past years as to the real value of the U.S. currency and economy. I'm Ansary, coming to you live January 24th, 2008 from Portland, Oregon. Initially, tonight, I tailored our discussion in the direction of implanted belief systems and indoctrination at the earliest level of psychological development. We aimed initially primarily to center on the particular mandated system of the government public educational school system with our guest, John Taylor Gatto at johntaylorgatto.com, retired teacher of 30 years in New York City. And he had an emergency come up just 5 minutes ago. So we are hoping to postpone the interview until next week. So we will get to phone calls in just a little bit. Later in the broadcast, we're going to cover some of the other developments taking place on the globe. Russian military cruiser hits all test targets in the Atlantic. The expansion of the military-industrial complex worldwide. Israel eyes thinking machines to fight doomsday missile strikes. Did somebody say Skynet? And the Pentagon is now exploring human fear chemicals and scare sensors for military use. In the meantime, let's go over the score. But this, my friends, is not a game. Well, the full moon Tuesday was matched by what is now being called in some circles Black Tuesday. The biggest world stock plunge since 9/11 worldwide is now at hand. Tuesday, interest rates were slashed again, this time 3/4 of a point or 75 basis points. This all took place within minutes of the opening bell, a fall of almost 4%. In fact, India stopped trading shortly after the bell, after they saw what was happening. It's the biggest rate cut in 23 years. It's very important that you understand what's taking place around us right now. Interest rates are expected to drop 2.5% by April of this year. Gold was $300 an ounce in the year 2001. Now it's almost $900 an ounce. It's approximately at $891 an ounce as of the moment. Financial experts around the world and the media are calling for the Fed to just let the system crash. That way we may have a change. That way we may have a chance of beginning our recovery instead of the present descent into fiscal Armageddon. Their terms, not mine. The sickness, though, collectively, we're now seeing as being prolonged, and we are being dropped to our knees slowly, so we don't even realize it's happening. Billionaire George Soros predicts worst recession for 50 years. Merrill Lynch already said we're in a recession. U.S. budget deficit is likely to hit $250 billion this year as the economy weakens. Now, just the other day on MSNBC, popular financial expert Jim Mad Money Cramer has called for the Federal Reserve to be investigated, insinuating the Fed is following a different agenda to the interests of the American people as the economy teeters on the brink of a recession. Again, the mainstream reporters keep saying the brink of a recession. When unemployment is up, poverty is up, the food prices are soaring, but the wage you're earning by the hour, the minimum wage, is not increasing and has not significantly increased in the last decade. How interesting is that? Oh, just get a second job, third job, you'll be fine. Just keep believing in the American dream. You'll get there soon. Don't worry, kid. Good luck. The sickness about this is is the belief systems that people have about this economy and what's actually transpiring right now. This is not an accident. Your leaders are misleaders. This system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and that's consolidate land, power, wealth. Bank of America has purchased countrywide with a tax write-off, and we the taxpayers are going to bail them out. Another new version of corporate welfare. This is outrageous, and now America is for the taking for the foreign interests, where the global corporations are more powerful than governments and have no national loyalty. Don't understand the words national sovereignty. We're not in Kansas any longer. The reality is that the Federal Reserve, to a certain degree, is more secretive than the CIA and has not been audited in decades. Alan Greenspan, you saw him on TV, shuffled around the spin zone when this fallout initially became regular daily news, masquerading as the voice of reason by blaming other people for the policies that he set in the first place. But he is just a puppet, just like Obama, just like Hillary, just like Romney, just like Chertoff, just like Ashcroft was. It doesn't matter which puppet is in position of authority. They rotate, and there's 1,000 people ready to replace them at a drop of a hat. And you know that. That's how decadent this society has become, and the criminal government enterprise, the international criminal syndicate of the elite. Economic integration is going to be the next step. This is problem, reaction, solution, just like September 11th, 2001. And the solution that they will propose is a tri-country currency, the Amero. And while people are denying that now, they're not going to retract the articles they're writing now that are denouncing people, questioning the Fed, questioning the SPP, and the North American Union. They'll forget in 3 or 4 years, and they'll admit it's here and how it's good and necessary for us to survive and maintain a certain GDP, which is anything but sustainable. This is the reality that we live in today. Ben Bernanke. Ben Bernanke came into power in early 2006, chairman of the Fed, when the mortgage problems actually began affecting a larger proportion of Americans. The Wall Street executives who presided over the subprime mortgage crisis currently shredding global share markets have now awarded themselves bonuses totaling $33 billion. Now, after the rate cut, now at 3.5%, it was just at 4.25, and it was raised or decreased to 4.25 just a couple months ago. The market is now in a state of panic as investors worldwide dump the dollar. The euro again has surged noticeably this week. Now, do you remember the $2 trillion wars, both Iraq and Afghanistan, that we forgot about, or the trillions that were missing out of the Pentagon's budget right before 9/11? This is the kind of stuff they don't want you to remember. Credit card debt, as a side dish piece of news, has risen over 11% annually after rising 8.5% the year before. By comparison, credit card debt rose at a rate between 2% and 4% from the year 2003 to 2005. The world markets are now in a state of a meltdown as both the FTSE and Dow Jones plunge again amid recession fears. Now, the Bank of England boss, Mervyn King, there's a guy who looks like he's got something to hide, has hinted that a rate cut is imminent despite inflationary fears. This problem is worldwide. Hong Kong shares have recently gone down 9%. And it's the worst day for China in 10 years. Tokyo plunged 6%. It was a whore day on Tuesday for the Australian stock market, plunging over 7% as investors panicked there as well. The system is failing because it was designed to fail, consolidate power. Russian shares tumbled as panic grips world markets is another headline. The impending economic crisis is not an accident, but the very predictable and I feel very obvious outcome of deeply flawed policies. Now, we've been watching this injection of money into the economy over and over again. George W. Bush recently threw the American people a bone in the form of $145 billion while soaring rates continue on the interest that we have to pay each day on the money that we are borrowing from China and European investors. Our spending is increasing. We still have a blank check for the military-industrial complex, which is expanding itself domestically. We were going to talk in detail about the public educational school system and how the conditioning begins on the young because they're easier to control than full-functioning, fully developed adults who have already determined what they believe about the world. Adults can be controlled and subjected to massive waves and amounts and layers of propaganda that deceives our minds on a subconscious level. But children is a completely different thing. Between the time they're born and 6, the mappings of their mind lay out the groundwork for how they will perceive and live in this world for the rest of their lives, their fears, their passions, their ability to tap into that inner genius that lives within you and me, everyone. Now, we are being bombarded on a physical, mental, emotional, psychological level, from the chemicals in the food, in the air, to the products that we're buying. Our energy, whether you call this by accident or by design, doesn't even matter. Does it even matter at this point? There are so many poisons in the food now, additives, aspartame, the fluoride in the water that's trying to expand in the U.S. and throughout the world, that is breaking down our ability to get out of this eggshell reality, 5 sense reality, third-dimensional realm of perception, the eggshell of consciousness, being limited to the logical world, to the rational world that we are taught from womb to tomb, the limited spectrum of possibility and human language and creativity. And it is like a disease. And this is something that your apathy, your laziness, your sloth, your fear, these feelings that you've had for years will not be able to continue to keep you from the truth and from changing your life, as you are literally pushed into this mess along with the rest of humanity. And there is no you, there is no me, there is only we. Because we are going down together. We have to rebuild this world together. So we have to take a very close look at our perceptions, which cultivate and create our belief systems, the mapping of the world in our mind, what we think is possible, how powerful we think we truly are. Now, in continuing on with this, we're pushing the country beyond a 1930s type catastrophe. The global financial system, including the U.S., is entering a period comparable to that of Germany in autumn of 1923, but on a far larger scale. Whereas the damage from the runaway hyperinflation in Germany was largely restricted to the country, the current crisis is global in scale. Under the Versailles Treaty ratified at the end of World War I, Germany was hit with war reparation payments so high as to make it impossible for the nation to function. To meet its obligations, Germany began printing money, funding its reparation payments and the need of its economy at the cost of debasing its currency. The monetary stimulation soared to such unprecedented heights that the term hyperinflation was coined to distinguish its deliberating horror. When your money is worth no more than toilet paper is worth, then you will begin to see the real assets that exist in your world. And you will begin to think about energy in a slightly different way, because it, in its consensus reality, has been symbolized by currency, now morphing into a world currency, where we base our self-values, how powerful we think we are, how sexy we think we are, how intelligent we think we are, by what we've gotten from this system that screams to us from the loudspeaker, get a job, get a career, get a this, get a that, and then you're a player. We don't want to play in that game. This is not the society that we are truly trying to create. It is being created for us. You can go ahead and judge your leaders by your own moral compass. It's an illusion. They're not like you, and they live in a completely different world. We've talked quite a bit about how much they've admitted in just the last couple of years about where they are taking this, including the COINTELPRO operation of the official mainstream global warming movement to push you into submission to accepting a global carbon tax and tax on other forms of human life now that they are deeming you a virus and putting this propaganda throughout the TV and in movies, distorting the world that is changing into a dark world, a world that we don't want to live in, a world to where instead of growing food and working with one another, we sooner slit our own throats and our mothers for a bag of rice, or because things are too tense, or because we're losing our minds. People are losing their minds. And when these things truly manifest, you will begin to understand why they built up a martial law system, a militarized local police department, the face scanning cameras, the cameras that can scan your mind and influence your mind. Whether you've done the research or not, it does exist. And you ask yourself, why is this happening? I can't come up with a rational explanation why so many things are coming at the same time, where X clearly marks the spot, and we can see this age of singularity. We can see this age of the American dream turning, morphing before our very eyes into the American nightmare. We can see this global enslavement grid building itself first before they put us into the prison. It will be a completely different world in a few years from now. It is a completely different world than it was a decade ago. You have to explore and get in touch with the adventure within, which goes beyond belief systems, and that includes what you think about God, the universe, this reality, what is possible, what is impossible, the nature of man, for better or for worse, and learning that this reality, I don't like to use the analogy, classroom, but is a place of learning. We're very confused collectively about the nature of relationships, and many of the problems in our society can be traced to the breakdown of relationships between man and woman, the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of multiple families living together in a tribal structure. Now we have been given collectively through the socially engineered world the new tribe, and it's the Americult, it's nationalism. It's even boxing us in against the world, viewing life as war. Warring with nature, dominating nature, instead of understanding the natural process, which is already underway. And the truth of the matter is, consciousness has always been there. We don't evolve into higher states of consciousness. The body machine, the vehicle we're living in now, evolves. Love is just is. Love is everything. Consciousness is there. The doorway is there. We're really talking about chipping away the distractions and the distortions to reveal the truth that was there this entire time. The fear, the four-letter word that kills creativity and even kills populations, is the very thing that prevents us from fully tapping into that infinite level of possibility that we know is there, that you know is there. But if we're to move on and see through the fear of this collapse and understand the light that does exist on the other side, we have to discard our attachments to this matrix. Relationships between people are like drugs to some other people. Whether it's heroin, cocaine, alcohol, amphetamines, shopping, gambling, sports, relationships, jobs, money, boats, cars, collectively, it's an addiction to looking outside of ourselves instead of within our own communities for happiness and for peace. And so no matter what happens in the 2008 election, until you get to the root of the problem, you've gone nowhere. And you know this is the truth. You know this is the truth. Take a look today at what is the propaganda for the 2008 election. The staged wars, the staged fighting. People even in the conspiratorial world spend too much time focusing on Obama's sexual history. There's a guy who's just come out saying he had sex with Obama and did quite a bit of cocaine with him in 1999 in Chicago. Whether or not that's true, we're not going to be able to really get to the root of our problems living in the political atmosphere, the political realm where they want us. where you flip on MSNBC.com, Yahoo.com, and they tell you what is the news of the day, what is happening in politics, and it's another mugshot of Hillary, another mugshot of Obama, not taking us out of that consciousness into the real issues that are affecting our planet, keeping you blocked in. That is anything but grassroots. So as we witness this empire crumble, you've got to understand they are doing anything and everything to hold on to the power that they have. And that means bombarding you through the food, through the air, through whatever else is existing. Because these things are no longer conspiracy theories. You've got to understand, man, this is business. Don't take it personally. This is business. Because the truth of the matter is, we are their commodities. Our leaders have become our deceivers. And the very fact that we have sought leadership through these institutions, through these bureaucracies, the very fact that we collectively, ancestrally, have turned over responsibility of taking over our, taking care of ourselves, getting our food, nurturing our children, because we've given it up to work in the factories of the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, we literally engaged in this behavior voluntarily. They directed us. But for many people, what's easier? Working your ass off in the agricultural world, having kids for the sole purpose of training them to work on your farms, or doing things a little easier with the use of machines. And now we have a booming population and not enough people to feed on the planet. Now that biofuels, whether you want to look at it or not, biofuels is the very thing that's reducing the amount of crops growing real food for real people. We're so mismanaged on the most basic, fundamental human levels, whether it be our societies, our ability to love one another, our ability to dream. That is the American dream, to be all you can be. And that is what does not exist. The American dream is not the packaging, the Coca-Cola, all the things that you think bring us wealth, because it has been a deception the entire time. The very thing that has made life easier for each generation for us to settle, stay in one place, work in the factories, work in the schools, go after the careers, is the very thing that has taken the ability to survive out of our bodies. And this is going to continue generation to generation to generation as the DNA passed on from man to woman to child fades. That knowing. Now there's a certain knowing that'll always be there in consciousness. But on a DNA level, in terms of your physical strength, your ability to hunt, your ability to think, your ability to debate, your ability to love, it's being degraded by design. We'll open up the phone lines in 5 minutes. There have been some other developments that paint the picture even clearer than I can into the twilight zone. That is the modern world. Grandmother gets arrested, waiting for fries. We're going to go over 2 different stories, both involving salt, McDonald's, aggressive male police officers, and women. A 75-year-old woman was arrested at Clearwater McDonald's drive-thru over the weekend because she wouldn't pull her car forward. Authorities say Jean Marola, a grandmother of 8, was arrested for disorderly conduct after she refused an officer's orders to move her car while she waited for the coffee and fries she ordered at the drive-thru window. Marola said the McDonald's employees told her to wait there for the food. She had a special order, fries, no salt. Special orders are directed to park on the side, according to the manager of that McDonald's. Very important point there. A Clearwater police officer who didn't like waiting in line behind her asked her for a license and registration. She denied the authority figure his request. She said, "No, I'm not giving you my registration and my license. What did I do wrong?" She questioned authority. That's what she did wrong. When she wouldn't move, the officer handcuffed her and took her to jail. Now, in another story in Atlanta, Georgia, a young African-American girl was arrested for putting too much salt on a burger at another McDonald's. Kendra Bull told Fox 5 in Atlanta that was an accident. In fact, her manager saw it, told her to be more careful next time. 3 officers responded to the scene as Kendra was taken into custody. Again, 3 male strong officers to take the young black African woman African-American woman, into custody to get her fingerprints taken. No doubt those fingerprints have now been uploaded to the server in the sky. She spent the entire night in jail and appeared the next day in court in jail clothes. That means they looked at her ass, they looked under her breasts, they made her spread, they did the whole cavity check, they took her fingerprints, they did all that for you to stay overnight. You don't just walk in. They take your number, literally. Just another blackface in the slave master's courtroom. And this is the thing. When you talk about racism, when you talk about the stratification of classes and the coming class warfare, it's actually already here as the middle class is being destroyed by design. How could you stay silent? How could you doubt your own power when now it is the only thing that we have going for us? The dynamic human spirit that refuses to submit. I want you to think about history and how far we've come. It's not because of our biceps or our physical strength. It's our wisdom. It's our language. It's our creativity. It's our knowledge that has been passed on word of mouth, written in stone for thousands of years before the age of the television, the newspaper, the internet, the radio. We were able to get by. We were able to take care of one another. We had a different social structure. And before the age of technology, which is now surpassing our own humanity and spirituality, that very thing has redirected where we are going from this point out as we move forward into the stranger and stranger world of the 21st century, where the future no longer needs us. According to them, what will become of us? Where will we go? Where will we live? When our concerns today are no longer our home, but the shacks and the soup kitchens, which many people will be experiencing in the years to come, the way things are going. The crime rate exploding in the streets. The rate of deaths, the rate of murders. This problem is not just about the police state. It's where society is being redirected and devalued to the level of mere animals, mere herds of populations moved from one place to another, to the next place, moving populations. That's what Top Off 4 was about. That's what Noble Resolve was about. We got some information, which we'll get into later on in the show, that Noble Resolve 2008 is back, a new version of it at least, and it does include 4 states. One of them is Oregon. So you see where this is going. Look at universities today. Universities and schools prepare the sheeple, the young people being indoctrinated through a psychological laboratory experiment to fulfill the needs of the economy, the market, the government. That's Homeland Security, that's securities, it's social services, it's criminal justice. Over 10% of the universities coming out, they're going directly into those fields to police you. There may be some people watching the show right now that have chosen to go into a path in the system because it's become available to us and the grants are there. Here you can make a career. Here you can live the American dream. Take a bonus. Take the grant. Take the scholarship. We have the openings. We have the funding. This is how you direct societies into fulfilling certain positions. And in 10 years, 15 years, it will expand itself if we are still alive as a country that is. Kids can't afford to go to school anymore. I'm up to my neck in debt. But you have to see beyond the debt when determining your own value and future, and even the fallacy of chasing after a creation of this century, the last century, the 20th century, which is a career. We are builders. We are dreamers. We are artists. We are poets. We are not numbers. We are not assimilated robots. And even though the conditioning is there, and it seems that all hope is lost for some people, they do know deep down inside exactly what's going on. They can see it because our psychic third eyes are being blown wide open. We can feel the pain and destruction around the world. We can remote view the things taking place around the world. You can subscribe to whatever limited belief system you choose to subscribe to when it comes to the power of the mind and possibility, going beyond the mind and even into heart consciousness to figure out exactly what's going on and how love can transcend this nightmare. You can go ahead and ignore that. That's your choice. and that's free will. That is exactly why no system is perfect and will ever be perfect, no matter what happens in 2008, whether it's socialism, capitalism, communism, a dictatorship. All of these systems place power in the hands of the elite that use formulas like problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialect, and the Fabian societies to manipulate populations into believing that we can move into a utopian society and leave all the work to robots. Once the robots take over and they're doing all our chores for us, it's even more of an excuse for them to move forward with their depopulation plans. I mean, think about this very carefully. We have one report, technology is killing relationships. It's doing a lot more than that. It's removed us from nature. But don't give up hope, because it's time to take a lesson from nature. If you look at a plant like plantain, you notice how this particular plant grows up through the concrete, grows up through places where man is building. Now, I believe that we should be in complete harmony with the earth, but I'm not convinced with the amount of historical evidence that's there that we are, in origin, actually of the earth. But regardless of where we actually came from and who really controls the governments of the world that are working together covertly through the military-industrial complex and other joining ventures, we have to take a lesson from nature. It doesn't matter how many weapons the local police department acquires from the military. It doesn't matter how many countries they bomb. And it doesn't matter how much money you lose. In reality, there is something growing right now. And when people get pushed against the wall, they begin to awaken. And right now, we are literally being sucker punched from the left to the right with our news reports in front of us this evening, just like the reports last week that are throwing us off balance to specifically, by design, keep us in a diabolical state of fear. That way our energy is suppressed. That way we're thinking primitively. We're thinking defensively. We're running and we're permanently in a fight or flight psychological experience. And when you are constantly obsessed with fear, your immune system breaks down. These things just continue throughout history, and the energy is accelerating. But to some degree, in terms of the diabolical nature, and human populations to some degree giving themselves over to dictatorships, whether they be official dictatorships or de facto dictatorships under a phony democracy like the one we're living in today, people giving up their power has been the norm. Tyranny has been the norm. Freedom and that ideal is bulletproof because it's organic and it is a part of nature. Plants need plants to grow next to. It helps them grow when they're around plants. When you plant different types of plants together in a garden. And diverse populations, diverse languages coming together helps people grow, just like human relationships, which is what is being destroyed, like the family. To learn to grow, to have a spiritual communion with another person, man to man, woman to woman, man to woman. When a man and a woman have sex, they're doing more than primitively procreating. They're actually communicating and transmitting information. Now, you can go ahead and laugh at this world and think that this physical hard disk is all that's real to you, as you've been trained to believe. To think that science is in fact a God that defines what is right, what is wrong, what is real, what is an illusion, when it has catapulted through the propaganda the illusion that is still enslaving us, that this and human life are the only things that exist in this universe. Time is an illusion, but we've done quite a good job of creating an artificial understanding of time through the Gregorian calendar. And the Gregorian calendar was pushed throughout the world thanks to the Christian Crusades, which are anything but Christian. And so when you look at this whole system of ancient civilizations, their languages, their cultures being destroyed, the smallpox in the blankets that was given, an early bioweapon to the Native Americans, is a part of our history. What makes you think because all these things existed then, the kings, the feudal system, the hierarchies, that they don't exist today? They exist today. And they have perfected themselves to a level to do exactly what it's supposed to do. Make you think you're free this entire time. What kind of conditioning do you have where you think that the dictator, the Antichrist, the one bringing down this system, is going to come to you as he really is? Why do people insist that the mainstream present it as such when they are all following the script, looking towards phony leaders like Keith Olbermann and Bill Maher and other people in the mainstream media that keep everything around Bush and the Iraq War without getting to the heart of the problem? And the kind of nation America has already turned into. You already know the answers. All you have to do is be honest enough with yourself to face them. Because when you begin to face these lies, my friends, the reason people hold back is because we realize very quickly, in a matter of a couple years, which is pretty quick in terms of the whole lifetime, it's beyond political, it's sociological, it's physical, it's almost psychic. There's something that's beyond the box of what's happening politically. It's all around us. It's in the air. We can feel it. We can taste it. I know you can. And when you begin to look at those things, you begin to see how you play in the system, how you may use control, deception to get a leg up. I mean, think about it. The current public educational government school system, which is mandated, is here to prepare the young to be both consumers and employees, to take direction and not tap into the real genius which exists within them. The whole system was founded by eugenicist researchers, the Ford Foundation, Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and it even includes J.P. Morgan. But we've forgotten all of this, and even Bones men were actually involved in the early corporations, Standard Oil as well, fossil fuel exploration, and the monopoly that soon followed. When you take a look at all this, you can see exactly what's happened to America. We're being looted right now. The whole thing about all the stuff with the economy being an accident, we are being looted right now. We have front row seats. Just because you're feeling the pain doesn't mean this is bad. It's waking people up. And there are stories throughout history of people in death camps in Nazi Germany that have survived, that right the moment before they thought they were going to die, they gave up the survival mode instinct in their brain and they let go, and something lifted within them and they experienced some form of enlightenment. And I saw that in the Cambodian man that was in the death fields in Cambodia in the 70s. You could see it in his eyes. Those that have seen death firsthand and have overcome it. Do we have a phone call? Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, well, welcome to the machine. They've mechanized just about everything. I have some solutions. Don't buy anything that's not essential. Don't have a cell phone unless it's absolutely essential.
That's true.
File exempt if you have the courage. Drive as little as possible. Have the ability to see through the illusions. Actually, toilet paper is worth more than money. Yeah.
The thing is, we have to be willing to adapt to the coming changes, the changes in our lifestyle. Instead of just modifying, like they're suggesting in the financial publications about how to get that second job and cut back your budget and manage your life on $6.50 an hour, think about spending your money differently, but also spending your real form of currency, which is your time, your energy, your focus, differently, because it's controlling consciousness and redriving that, keeping hold of that, and the environmental movement is the #1 target right now, free from the social engineers.
Well, they say it's going to be a financial victory, but I don't know. They could drop a dirty bomb for another 9/11 to use an excuse to attack our back. It's insane. Greed, hate, delusion. Shakyamuni Buddha said it, I don't know, 5,000 years ago. Jesus Christ said it. I mean, that's why these people are getting crucified, because they're telling the truth. It's threatening people who want to remain in the delusion that I want control. I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. That's the illusion. You're living on the shore of illusion. That when your little bubble pops, because life is short, it's like a bubble on the ocean shore. And when your little bubble pops, it's a big deal. But when you realize you're the ocean, the illusions are very, very clear and apparent. You turn on Fox News, you can cut through the crap. Excuse my French. You cut right through it. You can see through it. I called Fox News the other day, and I says, why don't you guys do a story on why Ron Paul, who is a Republican, and Dennis Kucinich, who is a Democrat, is why you aren't doing a story on why they're not allowed on the debates. Mm-hmm. And you know what he told me? He said, well, we just don't do stories like that. And then he just hung up on me. And I called back, and you know what I said? I says, you guys, well, I basically told them to go blank their self. I says, this guy was rude. I don't want to say his name, but he was rude. He hung up on me, and I was speaking nice. I said, why don't you guys do a story on why not Kucinich?
They're too busy keeping us afraid.
Anyway, that's enough out of me. Thank you, Alex.
I need to cover a couple more headlines, and that's a good point because we are also witnessing our peers taking place in the rearranging of the chairs on the sinking Titanic, where personally I'd rather get a boat, honestly, and just kind of get out of the Titanic entirely. Before we go to that phone call, a couple other headlines pertaining to the financial situation we're now in. Trillions have been lost in equity from the mortgage fallout. That's trillions. It could be anywhere from 2 to 4 trillion. That depends on how far prices continue to fall. The IMF is now warning of a serious global meltdown. And again, as I said earlier, to appease the masses, last week Bush injected, like a heroin junkie, $145 billion as a tax cut for Americans. This comes as the debt and spending soars higher and higher. Overseas investors buying aggressively in the U.S. We have a lot of Saudi Arabian industries and corporations and interests buying up critical infrastructure in the U.S. We have a French company buying a factory in Michigan. And we have a British company who in December bought a New Jersey maker of cough syrup. So for much of the world, the United States is now on sale, and not necessarily for a limited time, at a discount rate. Six Gulf states control sovereign wealth fund assets of some $1.7 trillion. Global unemployment rate decline in 2008 is another headline. And according to Zogby International poll released Wednesday, most Americans believe their country's economy is in decline and that cities are experiencing economic troubles on a variety of fronts. Things don't get better till they get worse. People don't start changing their lifestyles, their perceptions, their belief systems until they are affected personally. Now, I've definitely tried to walk towards the road of enlightenment in my coexistence with my other life, the land of the sheeple, the land of the zombies, the land of the service industrial complex, where my coworkers will not be aware of this when I go to work to slave for them tomorrow, won't care, and won't want to hear it. And the reality is, these are the people that are going to be warring and attacking one another when things begin to transpire because they don't understand what's happening. All they understand is the guy coming across the street with a baseball bat that wants his food, that wants his money, that wants his car, which is going to be happening and popping up all over at the same time. This happens in a crash. Gangs form. You'll all of a sudden see Lord of the Flies scenarios, people in ghettos and even the nicer areas mobilizing together for survival, not necessarily for their own spirituality or security of maintaining their morals in a crisis. It's staying alive. So a lot of darkness comes out of people when they're trying to stay alive. But as I said before, a lot of enlightenment is experienced in people. So there's a bipolarization taking place where people are waking up in large numbers to things that can't be explained, knowing things that they did not read before in a book or DVD, but all of a sudden they just know. And a lot of people that are behaving as if they literally were another species, even though they're not on a conscious level or on a radio station wavelength level, depending on where they're turned at, where they're choosing to keep their consciousness on. It appears as if they are different than us. But in reality, that information is available to them as well. And with that, we'll go to the next phone call, and then I'm going to finish up with some of these headlines. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, I sure appreciate your courage. I can see that you're humble and really mean what you say. But this is kind of weird. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of things, like in neighborhood watches and stuff like that, where there's kind of like it seems like they're giving. I've heard it said before, like they're giving people like risk score factors, and saying some people are potential terrorists, potential this, potential that, and if they can, do you believe that they're starting to track people, with like technical devices?
I'm glad you called in and brought that up, because there are thousands of things I'm thinking about now every week. I spend full days doing nothing but just thinking, and it is like, how am I going to fit this into the show? People need to be aware that there are drones in Portland. Now, right now, currently, they're the police drones, and they're scanning officially for drug activity, but they're there. And the unmanned aerial vehicles are already being unleashed on American skies. The FAA is moving forward to allow that incrementally once they can regulate it properly, which will be easier with robotics and remote control. Just put it on automation and synchronize it with the other plane so you can prevent a crash. More people buy it at the local level, so it becomes cheaper over a period of time. As it becomes cheaper, more people begin to use it, and the kids coming out of the university will be using them, the spies domestically, looking for the all-elusive enemy, which is here domestically, according to the propaganda. So it's the culture of fear. It's turning America against itself in terms of surveillance. They've already announced that they're reading our emails, and they can do this automatically without doing it like I'm going after Alex, or I'm going after Eero, or I'm going after Jim, or I'm going after Bill, or Sarah, or Jane Doe. It's none of that. It's automated and all uploaded to a large server. We don't even know how big it is, but the supercomputers can house all that data. Up in the skies, they can DVR the entire globe and go backward and forward because they have the server space for it. So all that already exists.
Like you mentioned something about them treating us
like animals. But a part of it is not just tracking and tracing. I'm seeing more and more pointing in the direction of observing human behavior and observing us psychologically as the animals that we are.
Okay, but if they can, seeing they're treating us like animals, if they can, like, catch you sleeping, they will put a tracking device in you, right?
If we continue to exist as a society, as it is today, with the current currency, the current type of administration, the current type of a banking establishment, we will eventually have to take the chip. A collapse has to come first.
Anyway, hang in there.
Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it does.
That as long as this beast continues to build,
it's going to go the way it's going to go.
There is an inevitability to that. So that is also why we have to pour on the whole examination of spirituality and infinite possibility of human creation, creativity, language, activism, thinking to move into this diabolical 21st century.
Right on. And I agree about the prison camps and stuff like that. The only thing that kept them going was their spirituality and somebody really close to them, like their wife. Anyway, goodbye.
Exactly. Thank you. We think of a nightmare a little bit differently than someone thinking about a nightmare 100 years ago or 100 years in the future, whatever societies may exist at that time in whatever form. So you have to understand from an observer, someone that may almost psychically beam themselves up to the sky and look at all of the energy and all the deception, all of the control, all the manipulation, all the lies, all the distortion, and view us as utter nutcases living in some sort of literally an insane asylum. And that is actually how this planet feels. That we're trying to get better from the sickness that we're experiencing on this planet called Earth. It's very, very strange what we're going through. I want to go over really quickly, now that we have completed the financial news. By the way, I highly recommend investing in dried food, even if you don't have the cooking equipment or containers. Order it now because the price is going to jump. I've said this to you so many times. I think you're getting the point by now, and you're seeing it in the news. Here is an example of 200,000 people moving just for food and shelter. This is the human refugee experience that is being understood by more and more people around the world this year. Tens of thousands of Palestinians poured into Egypt from the Gaza Strip yesterday through a border wall destroyed by militants and stocked up on food and fuel in short supply because of an Israeli blockade. They're starving them out. There's a new hole that's been punched in there, and Israel has been going through frequent rocket attack from Hamas. And as night fell, Palestinians, including entire families, continued to stream into the Egyptian side of Rafah. Local officials again estimate about 200,000 people crossed over in a rare opportunity to leave territorial areas that they call a giant jail. And that's what our country is becoming, our limited ability to travel and take care of one another and grow our own food. The transparent cage is becoming clearer and clearer and clearer. And you can't smash straight through that cage. But it's not exactly like you think it is, and it can't be done within the confines of the matrix control system. You have to be free on the inside, as that little jail pamphlet is handed out to prisoners they see in the penitentiary. Free on the inside. Give yourself over to the Christian religion. But when I talk about free on the inside, that's truly being free on the inside, no matter what happens around you. We're going to blast these headlines. I really wish I had 15 more minutes. There's so many things I had planned to talk about tonight. That's why you should check out my show on We the People Radio Network this Saturday from 12 to 2 Pacific Standard Time. You can call me open lines the full 2 hours as well. Children starve as Zimbabwe's grain goes to make luxury dog food. The state-run grain company in Zimbabwe has turned to making luxury dog food while up to 4 million of the country's people starve. Doggy Delight is a new product from the Grain Marketing Board, the only firm to which farmers are allowed to sell their wheat. It is supposed to supply millers with grain for flour to make bread. In our next headline, also Zimbabwe, and it is very important and critical that you learn about African history, that you look at what's happening in Africa and why it's happening, and how the whole population of the world knows who controls Africa, but we do nothing about it because really racism is beamed into us, I believe, subconsciously. All we've seen growing up is the black man, the robber, the thief, the criminal, and a lot of them are trained to be that way through the prison systems by treating them like animals, so they are their environment. So we have this cycle. It's not because they're black, it's because of where they are and the control that is imposed over them. From racial profiling to murder, they are still being conditioned to be slaves and keeping themselves, and there's not enough integration this day and age between blacks and whites politically to change things. We're still even within our own boxes. You look at a protest and it's just a sea of white faces. Why is that? What do we have to do in our own community to draw more African Americans into the protests? We need more, not less. They have a voice too, and we're fighting for the same thing. That's the interesting thing about it. It's not a white thing or a black thing or a purple thing or a blue thing. This involves all of us. And the same slave masters that controlled them are seeking to control us, and that's the reality. Zimbabwe Bank issues $10 million bill, but it won't even buy you a hamburger. The move increases the denomination of the nation's highest banknote more than tenfold. Even so, a hamburger in an ordinary cafe in Zimbabwe costs 15 million Zimbabwe dollars. We're going to finish off with the rest of the headlines at this point in time. Russian missile cruiser hits all test targets in Atlantic. Some of you may remember the psychic Leon Legant, who had a vision of China and Russia invading the U.S. He just recently had another nightmare that is building as a part of this story that he's already seen, the future he's already seen in his mind, and he's written some of it on his website. I'll probably bring him back in about a month or two. Mobile phone radiation wrecks your sleep. This was done by the cell phone companies, by the way. Radiation from mobile phones delays and reduces sleep and causes headaches and confusion, according to a new study. Technology overload can ruin relationships, according to an expert. A lot of the information that is in this article I already ranted about. Next article, Pentagon explores human fear chemicals, scare sensors, contagious stress in the works. This comes to us from Wired magazine. Remember, they tried to build a gay bomb, the military, something that would force someone to lose control of their sexual preference and urges. How delightful. Israel eyes thinking machines to fight doomsday missile strikes. We talked about this at the beginning of the program. How do you say Skynet in Hebrew? This is the question I ask. In our next headline, anti-terror joint forces training will be returning this year in Oregon and 3 other states, Indiana, Texas, and Virginia. And we have just a couple more articles to go before we conclude the evening. There's a story about a new police siren in Oklahoma City, which is louder than your average police siren and can be heard well within buildings and universities and can easily penetrate walls. It's a very strange story. I'm going to take another look at it, closer look at it, and bring that next week in the stack. We talked about the robotic military. A third of it will be robotic by the year 2015. What I didn't get to last week, and it does tie in with this article on Israel and their automated AI missile defense system that's going to be run by robots, automated, of course. The Pentagon has admitted just a couple months ago that our new robot army can be controlled by malware. You see, the codes have been written that are going to be put in the machines in the robots overseas. Open source software. This was a Guardian report, and it goes into the high-tech weaponry they're using and the ease that somebody with the right know-how and a laptop can actually hack into the system and take over an unmanned aerial vehicle. So as we close this chapter into another week in American history, what I want to leave you with is that no matter what you think about me, my presentation, the information, which you can find for yourself even if you don't have a computer, these days are days that you are going to remember for a lifetime. This information that I have presented to you for over 3 years now is going to stay with you as long as we continue to stay alive in this new American nightmare that is not going to give up just by taking our land, our freedom, or our children. They're going for our very soul. But the path to the ultimate truth they don't want you to know about still starts within. Good night.